On a moonlit night amidst the mountains, an old man sat at a wooden table with two individuals dressed in dark clothes and wide-brimmed hats that concealed their features. The old man initiated the conversation, asking if they had ever heard of an organization called the Crown. One of the masked individuals remained silent without uttering a single word. The old man noticed their silence as he sipped from his cup, concluding from it that they didn't know much. He then moved on to ask them about something else, assuming that as martial artists, they must have heard of the relics. After receiving no answer, the old man smiled, saying that the story would be a long one since they knew nothing about them. The old man began to explain, stating that the relics are the weapons of the heroes who dominated the Murum in the past. He added that these precious weapons are imbued with their souls and martial arts to the extent that they grant even fools the ability to face great martial artists. He emphasized their power by saying that a low-ranking swordsman could compete with a professional if he possessed one of these relics. He then returned to his starting point, revealing that the group that collects these relics is known as the Crown, and that it operates under the banner of the Murum Alliance as he had heard. He justified this by saying it was logical that the Murum Alliance would not leave such dangerous weapons unsupervised. After he finished speaking, the old man noted that the drink had run out and that he should be leaving. But at that moment, one of the individuals suddenly moved, prompting the old man to ask in surprise if they wanted to buy that thing. He then added in a serious tone that he was grateful to them for relieving his loneliness and asked if he could ask one last question as he placed his hand on a sword resting beside him. In a flash, the old man lunged at the masked warrior sitting before him. The warrior's companion moved quickly to defend him, but the other gestured for her not to interfere. The warrior asked the old man to return the sword, then added that what he was doing was carrying out the will of the Murum Alliance and that the relics would be sealed by Guan. The old man grew angry at this response, calling his words empty talk and questioned sharply whether they truly claimed that the existence of these relics disrupts order in the Central Plains. The old man gripped the sword named Baika and asked the young warrior how much he knew about it. The old man answered that it is said the relics were used by heroes of ancient times. But the strange thing about Baika is that the identity of its original owner remains a mystery. Then he asked the young man if he knew why. The old man continued his explanation, saying that the name Baika symbolizes purity and clarity, yet it collapsed before achieving its purpose, revealing its dark fangs. The old man confessed that he himself once held such hollow aspirations and ideals, but now he was just an old man earning his living by selling firewood, and all he did was protect the sword Baika that he had inherited from his ancestors. When he saw that the young man and his companion had no intention of backing down, the old man assumed a fighting stance, ready for a confrontation. The old man lunged towards the young warrior, delivering a cutting blow. The young man dodged the attack and drew his sword, skillfully parrying the old man's successive attacks. The old man closed in and kicked powerfully towards his face, but the young man managed to block it. The old man let out a desperate cry of anger and charged in a final attack, his sword clashing with the young man's in a flash of sparks. The force of the impact sent the young man staggering backward. The young man moved with lightning speed and dashed towards the old man, delivering a powerful blow. The old man looked at his trembling hand from the force of the strike. From the force of the blow, his sword flew from his grasp and fell to the ground beside him. The old man whispered that he did not have the courage to face his ancestors after this defeat. He mentioned that he had heard that those who come from the Crown to collect the relics are called the Diggers. Blood trickled from his mouth as he gripped the hilt of his sword, which had fallen from his hand, commenting that the name suited the situation perfectly. The young man caught the old man as he breathed his last, and the old man asked for his name. The young man replied that his name was Rang Gong-sun, and his companion introduced herself as Jo Si-hyun. The old man asked them for one last favor, pleading with them not to do anything that might tarnish the name of the sword Baika. Rang Gong-sun swore to the great hero as he held him that he would keep his promise. He affirmed that the Crown and the Diggers would recover and seal all the relics, including Baika. The old man uttered a final word of thanks before his spirit left his body. Afterward, Rang and Jose Hyun were seen walking in the Hebei region, with Jose Hyun carrying a large wrapped object on her back. Rang noticed that his companion was upset and told her that she should have known the old man was bound to die. He explained that the moment the old man realized they had come to retrieve the relic, he must have known that death was his inevitable fate. Rang tried to console her, saying there was no need to feel guilty, but she cut him off in protest. Jo Si-hyun questioned whether what they had done was right, as he was just an innocent old man. Rang replied firmly that what they did was right. He justified it by saying that the mere existence of the relics brings chaos and death, and that the goal of the diggers is to retrieve these relics even if it requires some sacrifices. To change the subject, Rang asked if there was any news regarding the Hebei region. Zhou Xian replied that there were rumors of an emerging rebellion centered around the blood sect. She added that there was another strange matter, widespread rumors about the appearance of Jiangshi. Rang repeated the word Jiangshi in astonishment. Zhou Si confirmed there were accounts of sightings, but it was difficult to determine their validity, wondering if they were real. However, Rang seemed skeptical, considering it natural for such rumors to spread when people's hearts are troubled. Rang noticed his companion, Zhou Si Hyun's anxiety and asked her sarcastically if she was afraid of the Jiangshi rumors. Zhou Si Hyun denied it in confusion, but Rang immediately silenced her, placing a hand over her mouth after they heard a noise coming from nearby. The two hid and watched the scene, revealing that the source of the noise was a group of bandits. The thieves were attacking a merchant's cart and gathering loot from it before Rang suddenly attacked them, killing them one by one in a surprise assault. Inside the cart, a man who appeared to be the merchant asked Zhou Si Hyun to untie the prisoners after things had calmed down. Zhou Si Hyun, in turn, helped the merchant, asking him if he was all right. But the man looked behind her with extreme terror and shouted a warning about what was standing behind her. Zhou Si Hyun turned around in shock to find one of the thieves who was supposed to be busy with Rang attacking her. The attacker delivered a powerful punch that struck her. Rang was clashing with one of the assailants who threw his severed hand at him in an attempt to grab him. Rang realized that this creature had not bled a single drop of blood despite the fatal stab, and was even fighting using a severed body part as a weapon. Rang wondered if these creatures were indeed the Jiangshi the rumors had spoken of. A mysterious figure emerged from the trees and gave an order to his men to kill the merchant. He added that if the goods could not be recovered, they must be destroyed. Upon hearing the order, the man and his companions rushed toward the merchant to attack. Rang stood firmly against them and easily parried one of their attacks and finds another person attacking him from behind, but he dodged the attack and delivered a powerful kick. It sent the attacker flying away. The assailants realized they were unable to defeat Rang. One of the attackers focused his attention on the merchant. The attacker rushed toward the merchant in an attempt to quickly eliminate him. Zhou Xian joined the fight and dashed toward the attacker, clashing with him in a fierce duel. Zhou Xian noted with surprise that their attacks were completely devoid of any internal energy. Rang confirmed her observation, and the two wondered if these enemies were merely living corpses. Rang leaped into the air and attacked one of the opponents with a series of rapid strikes. He then decided that regardless of whether they were Jiangshi or not, beheading them was the only way to stop them. Rang moved with incredible speed toward his next opponent. The opponent kicked his severed hand toward Rang. The opponent was surprised when Rang vanished from in front of him. The attacker whose head was cut off warned his comrade of the danger lurking behind him. And in the blink of an eye, the attacker spun around and managed to dodge a swift sword strike. In the midst of the battle, the enemy leader shouted a new order, telling his men to at least get rid of the goods if they couldn't kill the merchant. One of the attackers responded immediately and ran towards some large jars that were part of the cargo, then threw them in Rang's direction. But before he could destroy them, Rang lunged at them with a finishing blow, shattering them quickly. Rang confronted the opponent, asking sarcastically if he really thought he would stand idly by while they tried to burn him alive. The attacker grabbed a stone after his plan failed and used it to set Rang's sword on fire. The attacker rushed towards Rang, causing his entire body to ignite. Rang parried the attack with his sword and quickly retreated. Another attacker threw one of the jars toward his burning comrade. The burning attacker caught the jar, then smashed it forcefully on the goods. Rang commented that death by burning is the most painful kind of death. The attacker stood unfazed by the fire consuming his body. Rang concluded from their resilience that these creatures, the Jiangshi, do not feel this pain, especially after seeing one of them jump away while still on fire. Zhou Xian started to chase the fugitives, but Rang stopped her, explaining that there was no point in pursuing them. He added that they are creatures that feel no pain and abandon their comrades easily, and even if captured, they couldn't extract any information from them. Jose Haiyan objected angrily, saying they couldn't give up without knowing anything. Meanwhile, the man they had saved approached them and thanked Rang warmly, calling him a great hero. The man wondered how he could repay this kindness, but Rang replied that what he did was the duty of a martial artist, and there was no need to worry about it. Then Rang's attention was caught by something suspicious as the goods were burning. He noticed that none of the boxes bore the seal of the Merchants Association. Rang directed his question directly to the man inquiring which Merchants Association he belonged to. The man replied that he was affiliated with the Jusang Association. Rang's suspicions grew, and he asked to see his travel permit. The man became flustered and claimed he had briefly placed it on the cart before the chaos erupted. Rang was not convinced by this excuse and grabbed the man by his clothes, confronting him with the fact that he remembered well that merchants from the Hebei region belong to the Merchants Association and are under the protection of the Hebei Alliance. He added that even outside that region, they are protected by the Murum Alliance, which exposed the man's claims as lies. Rang continued his interrogation of the man, pointing out that he had never heard of the Jusang Association and that a merchant not having a travel permit, which is essentially his life, is a suspicious matter. He then told him he had one last question. As the goods burned in the background, Rang wondered about the nature of those materials. The man's expression suddenly changed and he smiled sarcastically, commenting on his bad luck. First, he was caught by the Zhangshi, and now he had to deal with a wandering warrior. Suddenly, the man began to laugh hysterically and then screamed in pain, falling to the ground writhing, realizing the man had taken poison to commit suicide. Jo Si-hyun announced that she would send a message to both the Hebei Alliance and the Murum Alliance to inform them of what had happened, but Rang suddenly stopped her while she was in a state of shock. Rang reminded her that Zhangshi were roaming in broad daylight and that smuggling operations were rampant. He then asked her if she had heard of any significant moves by the Hebei Alliance despite all this chaos. At that, Rang remembered what she had mentioned earlier about signs of a rebellion, which Jose Hyan confirmed. Rang asked her if there was a village nearby, and Jose Hyan told him about the village of Gugong in Gangyang. They agreed to head there first. The two arrived at the village of Gugong, which seemed quiet and peaceful. As evening fell, the inn in the village was bustling with life. Inside the inn, customers were chatting, with one mentioning that the monk, Zhongun, had brought rice and drink to Pingdai County again. Another man wondered if this was the reason the inn was so crowded, and his companion replied that the inn had always been busy since the monk's arrival. A third man added that if it weren't for the monk, Zhongun, the fate of this village would have been very different, while Rang and Jose Hyan listened in silence. Rang turned to Jose Hyan and asked if she had finished her investigation, to which she replied yes. Jose Hyan began to present the results of her investigation, explaining that the Gangyang region was suffering from famine and poverty due to years of continuous drought, and the situation was so critical that the outbreak of a rebellion at any moment would not be surprising. But in contrast, the village of Gugong was unusually vibrant and active. The mills and butcher shops were full of rice and meat, and most importantly, smiles never left the people's faces. She added that after further investigation, she discovered that all the credit for this went to one person named Zhongun. She explained that until last year, the village of Gugong was no different from other miserable villages, but everything changed after the appearance of the monk, Zhongun. Since his arrival, the village began to receive significant support from influential figures in the Hebei Alliance, including from Pingdai County. Rang wondered if the crown had sealed the relic yet. Jo Si-hyun noted with surprise that although the sword beaker was inside the box, there was still another empty space, meaning the sealing process was not yet complete. She wondered why, and Rang deduced that there must be something else in this village that Guan wanted. Rang pointed out that despite the spread of smuggling and the appearance of Zhang Shi in the surrounding areas, there were no ominous rumors circulating in the village. Jo Si-hyun agreed, and Rang expressed his feeling that this was not normal. Rang decided that they must go to meet the monk, Zhongun. The scene shifts to the monk's hut where they found a man kneeling on his knees, thanking him for his diligent work. The monk replied humbly that he had done no more than his duty as a Buddhist monk, but the man insisted that if it weren't for the monk, his family would have perished. Then he asked for leave to depart. As soon as the man left, Rang and Jose Hyan entered the hut. The monk welcomed them, realizing they were warriors of the Murum Alliance, and asked them the reason for their visit to his humble place. Rang decided to get straight to the point, stating that the Gangyang region was suffering from poverty due to a long-standing famine. But since the arrival of the monk, Zhongun, the village of Gugong had become unusually prosperous, and he asked him for an explanation. The monk told him he was mistaken and explained that the Gangyang region was a subject of a property dispute between Shaolin and the Hebei Alliance. Because of this dispute, the larger villages were able to get support, while smaller villages like Gugong were left without any help. The monk questioned whether it was cruel to investigate the villagers who had finally found a way to survive, but Rang described this logic as a fallacy. Rang explained that if they had requested the mediation of the Murum alliance, they would have certainly received support. Here, the monk replied sarcastically, revealing that the villagers had repeatedly asked for help from the Murum alliance to no avail. He accused the Murum alliance of being the one spreading fallacies all this time. Rang realized that the monk had no intention of letting them leave the village easily. The monk confirmed this, declaring that although killing is not the way of Buddhism, he would resort to it if it meant saving more lives. Armed villagers appeared from outside the monk's hut and rushed to attack on his command. As he announced, he would not hesitate either. Rang shouted that the attackers were the same Zhongsher they had seen during the day and ordered Zhou Xian to strike their bodies to paralyze their movement. Zhou Xian set off to carry out the order, and Rang engaged them. But Rang shouted a warning to her to be careful, as there were ordinary farmers mixed in among the Zhongsher. Zhou Xian confirmed she understood and began to execute the plan. She fought fiercely against the attackers, but soon realized their numbers were too great. Rang, who was also surrounded, noted that the narrow entrance of the hut limited the number of attackers who could charge at once. He ordered her to fight her way out to find a chance to escape, so they fought back to back. From a distance, the monk, Zhongun, watched the fight, acknowledging the skill of the Murum Alliance warriors, but decided he couldn't bear to see any more sacrifices. Therefore, he announced he would offer his assistance himself. The monk raised his staff, which unleashed a massive amount of energy and struck the fighters with a force that sent them flying through the air in pain. The crowds of villagers and Zhongsher descended upon them from all sides, armed with swords, sickles, and farming tools. One attacker jumped on Rang from above, but Rang dodged him, then cut him in half with his sword. The fallen attacker grabbed his leg. Rang was surprised by the situation, only to face another leader from the attackers. Zhou Xian screamed, "Commander!" In that moment, Rang realized with horror that the person Zhou Xian was about to kill was an ordinary human, but she didn't hear his warning and cut off his head. Zhou Xian screamed in terror, shocked to discover she had killed a normal farmer. In that moment of shock, one of the Zhongsher seized the opportunity and ambushed her, plunging a sword into her shoulder. Rang rushed to her defense while she writhed in pain from her severe injury. Rang reassured her and told her to hold on. From a distance, the monk commented that the end was near. Rang looked at the monk and his followers and decided to execute a plan to escape. He moved with incredible speed, breaking through the enemy ranks, then leaped over an attacker and headed towards the monk. The monk unleashed his power, preparing to block Rang's attack. Rang delivered a powerful sword strike towards the monk. Rang was surprised by the force of the impact, which pushed him back. The monk ordered his followers to pursue them. Realizing that Rang had used the sword's energy to block his attack and exploited the recoil to create an opportunity to escape. As Rang fled with his companion, the monk, Zhongun, realized he was not facing an ordinary warrior. Rang struggled through the forest at night, carrying the injured Zhou Xian on his back until he reached a secluded hut where a man met him and asked his identity. Later, Zhou Xian was placed in a bed to receive treatment. The man, who turned out to be the banished Chief Guanek, greeted Rang upon his return and asked why he was wandering at night while he was supposed to be looking after Zhou Xihyun, noting that she was bleeding heavily despite her injuries appearing minor. Rang, who was also suffering from serious internal injuries, replied and threw a green herb on the ground. Guanek looked at the herb in utter shock. Rang noticed his reaction and concluded that he knew the truth about this plant. Rang explained that while the lands in Gangyang were barren, the outskirts of Gugong village were densely planted with this herb, and he demanded that Guanek reveal its identity. Guanek told him the herb's name was Mayun Cho, a poisonous plant that corrupts the surrounding lands. He added that its toxicity heightens the senses and causes addiction and illness with overuse, and that the monk, Zhongun, was the one who brought it to the area. Rang's anger intensified upon hearing this confirmation. Guanek introduced himself as the village chief who was banished by Zhongun and asked Rang to put away his sword, assuring him that he knew he had no intention of harming him. Rang threw the herb into a nearby stove where it began to burn. Rang mentioned that he had smelled these herbs before, and after connecting the events, the herb smuggling, the Zhongsher, and the monk, Zongan, he realized they must be stopped, but he staggered from the severity of his injuries as he wondered about the monk's true purpose. Before falling unconscious into Guanek's arms, Guanek carried him, marveling at his persistence and strength despite everything. Gwanek returned to check on Josie Hyun's condition, realizing her situation was critical due to her wounds and blood loss. He went out of the hut only to be surprised by Rang's disappearance, wondering where a warrior with such serious injuries could go before hearing a suspicious sound coming from the trees. Gwanek found Rang sitting in a meditative posture surrounded by a powerful blue aura as he healed his injuries. Later, Gwanek saw him sending a message via a carrier pigeon. Gwanek approached Rang, pointing out that the residents of Gugong village do not possess advanced martial arts that would allow them to fully recover from deep internal injuries simply by controlling their breath and energy, which indicated that Rang's ability for rapid recovery was not ordinary. He then asked if he could expect an answer this time. Rang replied that the message was not addressed to the Miram Alliance, but to the organization, the Crown. Upon hearing this name, Gwanek showed signs of shock. Rang explained that the message was a request for support to retrieve a relic called the Blood Demon Scepter, which Zhong-un possessed. He stated that the reason the Murum Alliance had ignored the village's previous requests for support was still unknown. But now that it involved a relic, the Alliance would not be able to easily ignore the situation. Based on this, Rang asked Gwanek to tell him all the stories they hadn't had a chance to talk about the previous night. Rang asked Gwanek where he thought Zhong-un might have come from. Rang assumed that since Zhong-un possessed the Blood Demon Scepter, he must be from the Blood Demon sect, but Gwanek denied it, asserting that the sect had been destroyed. He explained that the Blood Demon sect was annihilated after the Peng family of Hebei allied with the Shaolin to launch a surprise attack on them, and that after a fierce battle, they managed to kill the sect's leader, the Blood Heavenly Lord. Rang seemed shocked by this information, thinking that no matter how secretly the sect operated, such a major incident could not have passed without the Murum Alliance noticing. Gwanek noticed Rang's reaction and concluded that the rumors he had heard were true. When Rang asked him about these rumors, Gwanek revealed that there were talks of Murum Alliance warriors being mixed in with the forces that wiped out the Blood Demon sect, and that the Alliance was systematically covering up the truth of the sect's extermination. He expressed his astonishment that even a warrior from the Alliance like Rang was unaware of it. Rang gripped the hilt of his sword and asked Gwanek again about Zhong-un's true identity. He wondered aloud if he was from Shaolin or from the Pang family or perhaps from the Murum Alliance itself. Gwanek described these speculations as excessive, then knelt and presented Rong with a piece of cloth explaining that it contained all the information he had gathered over the past years. He revealed that it was a map showing the distribution stations for the Moyuncho herb. He added a crucial piece of information. Since Zhong-un began distributing the herb, the Pang family had started helping Gugong village. He told Rang that the Moyuncho herb was being transported to the Pang family. Based on the map provided by Gwanek, he concluded that if there were carts carrying Moyuncho herb being chased by Zhong Yuan's men, there must be other carts passing through the designated distribution stations on their way to other places. Therefore, he instructed Rang to start the investigation from those points. Later, a man was driving a horse-drawn cart through the forest with extreme caution. The man stopped suddenly and called out into the void, asking whoever was hiding to show themselves. Someone emerged from behind the trees, and the cart driver asked with a sarcastic smile if he was the Zhang Shi he had heard about in what seemed to be an exchange of a password. The other person replied, demanding the goods and revealing his identity. The driver immediately prepared to attack him, but was surprised to see that his opponent was attacked by someone else by a sword that pierced his chest from behind. This sword belonged to Rang, who revealed himself after cutting the other person in half and attacked the driver with force, their swords clashing. Rang managed to break the driver's weapon and grabbed him by the neck. Rang noticed that the driver was trying to commit suicide by biting down on poison hidden in his teeth, so he quickly delivered a powerful punch to his face to stop him. Rang looked at the injured man, wondering if he was planning to end his life. He then reassured him sarcastically, threatening that if he didn't answer his questions, he would make him wish for death. Later, Rang raided a warehouse where Moyuncho herb was being sorted. Rang stormed the place with force and threw the captured cart driver in front of the others, who apologized to his comrades while injured. The group leader ordered Rang to be killed, who easily fended off several attackers. The leader recognized Rang's skill and ordered his men to form a battle formation. Rang identified this style as the 5-element sword formation and wondered if these men were from the Wudong sect, but he quickly dismissed the idea, realizing they wouldn't reveal their identity so easily. The leader gave the order to attack, and Rang found himself surrounded by swords from all sides as he prepared to defend himself. Rang engaged in the battle against the sword formation using a powerful fighting style that knocked down his opponents. One attacker dropped his sword to the ground while Rang remained steady and focused. The opponent took advantage of the situation and rushed to attack him, which angered his leader who reprimanded him for his reckless act. The attacker justified to himself that survival was the most important thing, even if it meant revealing his identity, and that if he could kill Rang, there would be no danger of their secret being exposed. The attacker used a fighting style based on fist power, unleashing a massive amount of energy towards Rang. But Rang dodged the attack easily, leaving his opponent in a state of shock, then delivered a swift sword strike to him. With it, he cut off the attacker's head. The other attacker was injured in the leg and fell to the ground in pain before Rang crushed his foot with his boot, causing the man to scream in agony. Rang commented that from their flawed Wu-Dang formation and the powerful Shaolin martial arts they used, he could guess their identities. But he added that this was not all he wanted to know, then crushed the man's other foot, demanding that he confess voluntarily or else he would lose his remaining limbs. Meanwhile, in Guangdong's hut, the banished chief was speaking to Jose Hyan, who was lying in bed, advising her to listen to him for a bit so she could recover quickly. Guanek noticed that she didn't seem shocked by her physical injury, but perhaps was shocked by something else. Rang returned and told Guanek that the identity of the attackers he had captured were fallen monks, and gave him a piece of cloth with the destination of the Moyuncho herb shipment. Rang revealed that the herb was originally a means of conveying information to the Murum Alliance and other sects with the aim of exposing the corruption of some of the Pang family's youth in Hebei and the atrocities of the monk Zhongun. But the greed of the fallen monks led them to increase the amount of goods to get a share for themselves, which ultimately led to their downfall. Guan Iq commented that this seemed logical as even with the fall of the Pang family, not everyone would become addicted to Moyuncho herb. He concluded that based on this information, Zhongun's true identity could also be revealed. Rang and Guanek reached a mutual conclusion that Zhongun was most likely from Shaolin. Guanek agreed, explaining that after the fall of the Blood Demon sect, a power struggle arose between Shaolin and the Peng family in Hebei. Based on that, he speculated that Shaolin had sent Zhongun to destroy the Peng family from within. Guanek considered this story plausible, adding that the fallen monks in this region held a grudge against Shaolin more than anyone else, making them easy targets for manipulation. Guanek added that if it harms the Shaolin, they are willing to do anything. Later, Jose Hyan asked Rang about his next move. Rang replied that the plan would not change, and that they would attack Zhongun as soon as support arrived from the crown. He noted that some information about the Moyuncho herb had already reached the Murum Alliance and other sects, which opened the possibility of receiving direct support from the alliance in addition to the crown. Rang turned to Yo Si-hyun and asked her what she would do and whether she would participate in the fight. Jo Si-hyun admitted that although the villagers attacked them first, it was the first time she had killed someone who was not a martial artist. She remembered how one of them was holding a primitive weapon and wearing ragged clothes and concluded that he did not fight out of malice, but for survival. She began to speak nervously, but Rang interrupted her calmly. And at that moment, a carrier pigeon arrived. Rang told Jo Si-hyun that sufficient support would arrive from the crown, and that she was not obliged to participate in the fight if she did not want to. Rang was shocked after reading the message and stood on the edge of a cliff overlooking the village. Jo Si-hyun, who had noticed his concern after receiving the message, followed him and asked him about its contents. Rang revealed that the message ordered him to return to the crown to take on another mission, and that the alliance was holding discussions with the Shaolin regarding the Blood Demon scepter. Jo Si-hyun was shocked by this news. Rang concluded that the Murum Alliance must be aware of the situation in Gangneung, and that it was looking at the bigger picture, ignoring the fate of the village. Jo Si-hyun asked him what he intended to do. Rang explained that his stubbornness stemmed from his strong faith in the Murum Alliance and the crown and his belief that preventing the chaos caused by the relics would save more lives. But he now realized that if he followed the will of the alliance, more people in Gangneung would die. As night fell after Rang returned to Guanek's hut, he sensed the presence of several people inside the hut and rushed inside, finding a group of the monk's men destroying the place. One of the monk's men recognized the new attackers and shouted that it was them. Their leader ordered them to flee immediately, and they escaped in panic through the windows. Rang went out after one of them and finished him off before he could get far. Inside, Jose Hyan found the banished Chief Guanek lying on the floor, writhing in severe pain from his injuries. She immediately ran to him and asked with concern if he was okay. At that moment, Rang entered and asked her about the village chief's condition. Jose Hyan replied that his wounds were deep and he needed immediate treatment, stressing that if they had been a little later, his life would have been in danger. Rang asked her to take care of the village chief, which surprised her, and she asked if he really intended to go alone. Then he rushed out of the hut, hurrying towards the place where the monk was staying. Rang announced to her before leaving that he intended to disobey the orders of the crown. He explained that although the orders were issued based on the will of the organization, he could not turn a blind eye to the deaths of thousands of innocent people. And for this reason, he decided to head to Gugong village alone. Jose Hyen objected to his decision, reminding him that the enemy's numbers were very large and that she should go with him. But Rang told her that she would be of no help to him in her current health condition, and ordered her that if he did not return, she should inform the crown of what happened. Rang sped off through the forest after telling her that if an envoy from the crown died, the organization would no longer be able to ignore the matter. He asked her to stay in the hut and monitor the situation. Rang arrived at the quiet village of Gugong under the cover of darkness. He rushed quickly towards one of the villagers. He had barely taken his first steps when the villager spotted him and screamed in terror, announcing his arrival. In a swift motion, Rang drew his sword and killed the man before he could warn the others. He soon found himself surrounded by a crowd of armed villagers who had gathered to confront him. Rang remembered his conversation with Jose Hyen, who had asked him if he had a plan, pointing out that no matter how skilled he was in combat, he would face martial artists armed with corpses and relics. She accused him of seeking to sacrifice himself to provoke the intervention of the crown, but he assured her that he would not enter a battle he knew was lost. He told her then that he did have a plan, but he couldn't reveal it yet, asking her to trust him and wait. Jo Si-hyun went to examine the box containing the sword Baika, but was surprised to find that the sword had disappeared from inside the box. Back in the present, Rang stood amidst the crowd holding the ancient sword Baika that he had taken from the box, which was glowing with immense power. The attackers screamed in utter surprise. As Rang brandished the sword, he felt it was incredibly light, as if he was handling a blade he had long been accustomed to, and he set off to fight his opponents with amazing skill and power. As he fought, Rang realized the immense power in his hands, wondering to himself if this was the true power of a relic. Despite the new power he possessed, the fight was still intense. As Rang found himself struggling to parry his opponent's attacks, he wondered if the reason was that he had not yet fully adapted to the sword's power. In the midst of the battle, one of the opponents launched a powerful attack of red energy, which Rang struggled to block, resulting in a massive explosion. From amidst the dust and smoke, the monk, Zhongun, appeared, smiling sarcastically, and commented on the irony of the person tasked with sealing the relic using it himself in battle, then asked with disdain if this is what the Murum Alliance calls justice. Rang looked at the bodies strewn around him and retorted sharply, questioning how someone who had just killed his own followers, even if they were just corpses, dared to speak of justice. Zhongun laughed at the word followers and asked if these beings looked like humans in his eyes, explaining that they were merely weapons created by his own relic. Then Zhongun drew his attention to the sword Baika and asked if he knew that this sword, whose original owner is still unknown, bears a special title. He revealed to him that everyone who has used this sword has met a tragic end, and that its title is the Sword of 100 Ghosts. Then Zhongun raised his hand, which was surrounded by dark energy, vowing that he would enjoy watching Rang die using that cursed sword, then launched an attack towards him, but Rang managed to skillfully dodge it. The monk then ordered his men to attack and kill him. Rang re-engaged in the fight, but felt he was unable to fully utilize the sword's power, and concluded that the sword's energy was clashing with the martial arts he had mastered. Faced with this predicament, he decided he had no choice but to completely surrender his body to the will of the sword. As soon as he did, an aura of immense ghostly black energy exploded around him. The monk launched an attack of ominous energy towards Rang. Zhongun noticed this with a wicked smile, commenting that it seemed Rang was getting used to using the relic, and then challenged him to block his next attack. Rang realized that blocking or cutting Zhong Yuan's attacks was futile, and that there was only one way to win. He concluded that he must target Zhong Yuan's body directly, so he bypassed the attacks aimed at him and leaped into the air, launching himself directly at the monk in a lightning-fast attack. Rang's surprise attack succeeded as his sword pierced the body of the monk, Zhongun, in a finishing blow. As the monk was falling, Rang confronted him with the truth he had discovered, saying that rumors had it that Zhongun killed the great master Heil Cheon to seize his relics. Then Rang condemned his actions, questioning if the Shaolin monks had abandoned even the basic principles of Buddhist monks. Rang declared confidently that the blood demon scepter would be recovered by the crown, and that once that happened, order would return to Gangyang. But Zhongun burst into a sarcastic laugh, describing Rong's words as worthless nonsense. The monk then retorted that the relics never belonged to the Murum alliance in the first place and added that the true owner of the blood demon's scepter was none other than himself, the great master, Haol Chion. As he was announcing his true identity, a massive bloody energy erupted from him.
Alright, that's the end of the story. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.